I'd like to call this meeting to order. Let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated. Okay, we don't have any minutes from the prior meeting.
I wasn't here, these are your next ones.
Yes, we'll have those next meeting. All right, let's go right into, we have Ida Williams, and we have asked her to present the Parks and Rec piece, part of their plan that they're working, their document that they're working on for us. So I will turn it over to Ida. Can you hear me, Ida?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. And I'm going to get out of the way here and let everybody have at it. Go ahead.
Excellent. I have a little bit of echo, but it's not bothering you all the time. So, sounds good. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm so happy to be back in front of you all today. And I'm going to share some of the recreation asset initiative work that I actually completed earlier this spring. And since I started with Dave about a week ago, I've moved forward into mapping elements, as well as some data that we prepared earlier this year, just to make sure we got it in front of you all after that conversation. So you can kind of look at this meeting as a brief share out as to where SE Group is at this stage, and also an opportunity for us to reconnect, hear about where you come back to this point, and start to think about those opportunities to re-engage with the integration process from here as we move forward. So as I prepared for you today, I have recreation asset inventory I'll share with you all. In this form, it will be a brief overview of the full document that is compiled. I'm going to share a little about the grant strategy and initial recommendations that we've prepared in this context, and then briefly I've got a little bit of data to share about the short-term rental industry and how that both presents challenges and opportunities for connectivity around those recreation assets. So as you dive in, please forgive a wordy slide to start off, but I wanted to capture some of these key areas that we are looking at. And first, I want to mention that all of this data, information, and the context in which we are looking at it through is coming from what we've heard from the CPAC Committee and the engagement that we have been engaged in, specifically in 2024, fall 2024. So as we look at the inventory, we want to understand the categorization opportunities between passive and active recreation types. So that the recreation person engages with these assets in your community. Passive assets would include things like catchment areas, trails, scenic overlooks, really emphasizing conservation, the peace and quiet that we all know and love. And specifically, those low impact activities. And active recreation assets would include things that are more designed for activities like parks, sports fields, playgrounds, community centers, and organized events that would take place in a more structured context. Think your traditional soccer games or baseball games, that kind of thing. So as we understand not only the folks that exist in town, but also the gaps and opportunities for either improvement, expansion, or identification, we'll then take that information and make sure that it is shared in context so that we can pave the path forward for future investment. So I'm sure you'll see with the list thus far, these are all related to a document that outlines clear opportunities and opportunities for investment. Specifically insights and recommendations that we've heard both from the community, that were drawn from our expertise and our site visits to date, and then how they align with the great amenities that we have today. at some of the mapping that has been created.
All right, I think you're good to go on. Thank you.
Thank you. So my first goal that I want to share with you is it's a really simple map that has a really clear goal. We simply want to communicate and understand where passive and active recreation is taking place in Townsend, and understand where there's opportunities for people to engage with the natural space, to recreate, and then to also gain access to the national park experience that is at your back door. So here listed we have Memorial Park, the Townsend River Walk, of course, is shown, Townsend Greenway, the River Access Park there on the river, of course, the covered bridge, which is a great attraction. We have the two cabins shown, although it's outside of the city limits, but it's an important asset. The Hollow Lake Park, soccer field, and playgrounds. We also have showcased here some key auto recreation businesses that are important draws and for the active recreation ecosystem. And then one of the pieces I wanted to showcase is how Townsend fits into this incredible recreation experiences all around you. So many gateway communities like yourself don't just take advantage of how they curate a recreation experience in the city limits and how it gives back to your community, but also what that connectivity looks like, especially connectivity that can happen without car-based transportation. So thinking about connectivity to trails from your citizens' back door, from their garage, if you will, as well as for visitors. So thinking about that connectivity and that quality of life associated with being able to gain access to national quality recreation right outside your back door. So I think this map really concisely shows the opportunity and how Townsend is beautifully situated for that access. So from here, I'll touch base on some of the grant strategy. So many of the recommendations that we'll dive into a little deeper in future meetings need funding to move them forward. That's one of the elements that we promised you all, and we'll move forward with is not just thinking about the opportunities to provide additional resources to your community members that are the citizens of Townsend, but how to make sure that you're fully leveraging state, federal, and local resources to move that forward, so that the burden of that funding doesn't fall solely on the taxpayers and the citizens of Townsend. So again, on the right here is just a screenshot of what is a broad list in a broader document listing groups, names, links, types of projects affiliated that will tie directly into some of the recommendations we're making, the funding amount provided, and the timeline. So when those grants repeat this year over year, and what the match requirement is, as well as in the narrative portion, ways to leverage that match and create nesting opportunities to make the most use of the resources from the city of Townsend. So for this specific additional recommendation, we're targeting grants for activation in the $40,000 to $150,000 range, which we feel like best fit the opportunities to create and activate matching, as well as ensure that Townsend's capacity isn't, that we don't promote Gala and team with a lot of grant management right out the gate. So we want to create opportunities to capture that low-hanging fruit and move the needle in a way that feels like they're taking full advantage of and leveraging those key resources and opportunities. Okay, I'll pause here for a minute, and then from here, I want to talk to you a little bit about the short-term rental data that we've been looking at. Okay, we can pause for questions at the end too. But I want to share this data with you. Mayor Prater, Dave, and I had a good conversation back in April of this past year, really thinking about the role of short-term rentals and the pressure that it puts on the resources in Townsend and opportunities for leadership for the city, both through the lens of recreation and as well as more broadly on how we can better understand the active listings within the community and beyond that are dependent on the resources that the city of Townsend provides, as well as the businesses in the area. So I just, this data is provided by a site called AirDNA, which is a paid data site that looks at a wide range of data by zip code. So that's why you're seeing kind of a bigger spread here than we typically like. Of course, we can zoom in on Townsend and see that the large quantity of AirDNA, or excuse me, Airbnb or VRBO primarily rental opportunities within the city of Townsend. And what this data is telling us is that there's been a 14% increase since March of 2022 in listings for this footprint. And of the most common rental times, and STRs stands for short-term rentals, so that acronym clarification. And it, of course, for summer, June and July, as well as for October and November, those are the peak rental times, as well as the peak price per night, if you will, is during those peak times. Across the year, that average daily rental rate is around $242 per night, generating per property around $42,700 in total before taxes. And as we look ahead, I wanted to zoom in a little closer on Townsend so we have a little bit better understanding of the region overall, as well as what domain looks like. And those of you all who either are in the hospitality industry or are just paying attention to traffic patterns in Townsend, this graph will not be a surprise to you, but I think it's great just to see it on paper and understand where those pain points might occur and how we make sure that in our planning preparation we're not necessarily preparing for the peaks, but we're understanding the pressure that the resources of the city of Townsend and you face as citizens of Townsend throughout the year, and how we can make sure that we're providing resources to create a manageable experience here and not just many of the peaks, which is really painful at this point. So what we're looking at here is again just that zoom in data for the short-term rentals.
Yeah, can you back that slide?
Of course.
We've talked at length about why this committee is put together to look at kind of the larger 37882 Tuckleachy Cove. But in terms of these short-term rentals, we are including the entire Tuckleachy Cove in it. Though obviously it appears the vast majority of these short-term rentals are outside of the city boundaries. Do we have a way to know like how many are actually within our jurisdiction and what we can administer?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Lisa. Thank you. So the way AirDNA is conglomerating, if you will, their data is by zip code. So that is what is currently presented on the screen. With a simple GIS overlay and even just counting, go with it and count our dots within the city boundary, we can pull that number. Based on what I'm seeing, and I think I'm recalling from this earlier conversation back in May, we have about a quarter of that 560 that are within the city boundaries, and therefore, have opportunities to be engaged with by the city as a whole. That being said, I think one of the interesting pieces is thinking about the culture of the short-term rental industry and how many of these rental accommodations are interested in coming to this area in part because of the peace and quiet and certainty that the city is aligned with. So I think that there are opportunities for leadership from the city in terms of what are the expectations of our short-term rental guests, how zoning or layered reports affect the city of Townsend, that some of the best practices, if presented well and done in collaboration with owners, could have an overall positive effect on quality of life for neighbors outside of just the city of Townsend limits.
Yeah, and do we have any existing oversight into the occupancy taxes that should be charged in short-term rentals that come back to the city of Townsend as revenue?
That's a great question. Based on average daily rate and yearly revenue, we can make an educated guess on that. That is a very, as you can imagine, a very touchy subject between Airbnb, which is providing this paid resource, and I'll just target Airbnb specifically in terms of what they are required by law to provide and what they actively do. So
Yeah,
say that you're not alone as a city and a municipality in navigating what is a hotbed issue internationally.
Yeah, and so currently, the city of Townsend is receiving no tax revenue from short-term rentals unless it's being voluntarily told to the city as some sort of LLC registered here. So, yeah, okay. And sorry, I'm just gonna keep pushing on this for a second. Do you have a way to understand which ones, does the reporting site have a way to understand which of these rentals are standalone units versus split units that may use a single foundation?
So the way it's pulled is off of the Airbnb or Airbnb site. So if a single address is listed multiple times on one site, then that would account for individual Airbnb or Airbnb or rental opportunities.
Okay, cool. So,
Yes. So,
does
does that answer your question?
yeah, it does. So in summary, 140-ish listings, 150-ish listings in Townsend proper, but just looking at the map, the vast majority of which, whether they're in Townsend or not, use some sort of our infrastructure to get to them. Whether it's in Laurel Valley or Dry Valley or whatever. Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thanks, Houston. So just as a summation, thinking about some of the ways that similar-sized municipalities and cities are managing these challenges that many of you all have become familiar with. Of course, as Houston mentioned, is the important role of the business license, not just as an opportunity to create common ground and shared understanding within the business climate, but also to interest revenue on behalf of the city. Some communities are looking closely at the number of rental days allowed per locality to kind of ease the burden of some of those neighbors within a region, specifically around city limit challenges, as well as the zoning question, which you all are working to sing with UTD on around how your citizens in Townsend are retaining their quality of life and everybody was being good neighbors all the way around, whether that may be permanent residents or short-term rental guests. Story slides if you have questions.
I just have a quick question. If
Sure.
someone's wanting to list their home as a short-term rental, do they have to go through any type of validation process with Airbnb or Verbo, or they just pop pictures on there and they walk away? I'm unfamiliar with how that works.
So, my sister and I for a very short time, so I'm speaking now as just our private citizen, Ida, did Airbnb at her mother's house for about a year. It was an interesting process before renting out to a friend who was in need of housing. And through that process, it was very simple. There was some validation, or verification of, that you were a citizen of, the United States and things like that, but it did not go much further into other kind of safety features or verification.
Thank you.
And for that was in Floyd, Virginia, which is my hometown, and through that, we did pay a 7% tax to the county itself.
And is that because the county knew or because you guys voluntarily did that?
This county is like that's a requirement for all Airbnbs or short-term rental, and so we registered the property with the county and then paid the taxes quarterly if it was.
Thank you.
And so for the city of Townsend, which doesn't have a taxing authority, as I understand it, we would need to have some sort of permitting license to have any sort of revenue from this unless we float it through a county level. Is that accurate as of right now?
Well,
That's it.
yeah,
Sorry.
well, we're taking a look at this right now, so we'll speak a little bit about it. The city manager will give a report out on this at our city council meeting tonight. But right now, all the hotel motel tax goes to the county and it goes to the Tourism Development Board. So the state law is you have to, if you're going to collect that, you have to send it to a Tourism Development Board. And then we get a portion of the sales tax. So that is something that we currently receive back if it's reported. And so there's issues with, making sure that folks are appropriately reporting their incomes and things like that. One of the things that we're looking into as well is in Maryville and Alcoa, and I think maybe some other cities, they charge an additional occupancy tax to go to a different tourism development authority. And so should we be able to create, if it looks like something we wanted to do, create a tourism development authority, then we could potentially charge a little bit more tax. There is a limit in the statute, I think it's 7%, and that's on top of the 4.5%. So the most that we could give, correct me if I get this wrong, 2.
It's capped at 8%. The county's already done 5%, so our part will be 3%.
Yeah.
Which
But-
is like
Yeah, but this is right to bring this topic up for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's an important revenue stream, as we just discussed. Number two, it has an impact on our overall housing stock. And so we only have a certain number of houses in the city. I think we have 30 open building permits now. Some of those are for businesses as well. But the proportion of our housing stock in the city is impacted by short-term rentals. And you can see from IDA's information, 14% increase since 2022. I'd be interested to see, since sort of the advent of these online sites like VRBO, Airbnb, what percentage of our housing stock is now occupied exclusively by short-term rentals. And as you all have heard me say before, that's important because it impacts people that actually live here a substantial part of the time. I won't even say full-time anymore, but just live in Townsend a substantial part of the time. You can imagine, a scenario in which most of the people that own property in Townsend didn't actually live here. That might change the way that they view a lot of our policies and procedures. And so as we're thinking about the community plan, having a good balance between policies that support people living here a substantial portion of their time, full time if possible, is going to be really important. So, and then of course, as we've been discussing, how does that impact our revenues for the city, because it impacts pressure on our infrastructure. And so, those are all important considerations, and I hope that this information that IDA's prepared today will inform us on that. I'll stop, Mr. Chairman, see if anybody else has questions on the short-term rental. I do have one more question for IDA on the first part of her presentation.
Any committee for IDA?
On the first part of your presentation, I really liked taking a look at our recreation assets. So I know that there's a lot of assets that aren't on here, but they're probably because they're not considered recreation assets. But I think you've got a pretty good list here, and I like the grant strategy. Now, one of the things that we were told, and you may be familiar with this in your expertise, is that in order to apply for some of these grants, we need to have a Parks and Rec master plan. And that's what y'all are developing. Will all these things come together as part of a discrete document, what I would envision as an annex, a Parks and Rec master plan, such that when we apply for these grants between $40,000 and $150,000, we'll be able to say, here's the plan?
So yes, that's correct. And this document is going to be, as you said, an annex of the overall community plan. Kelsey and I have actually been chatting quite a bit the last week or so since we were reactivated to build some new forward on these elements. She did it this evening, but look forward to continuing to collaborate with her and Parks and Rec Committee. Essentially, what the document will be is about an 8 to 10 page document that lists clear recommendations for this process, best practices for a city of decent size, and what the expectation and goal of providing recreation amenities is, and then how the Parks and Rec Committee can best align their resources and their volunteer board with partnering with the city to be able to move forward on some of these actions. So as we talked about from the beginning, this document will be a very a toolbox oriented, lots of opportunities for copying pages and working through them in a systematic way, looking through checklists, as well as key questions that will help guide future internal planning to make sure that year over year the Parks and Rec Committee and the city itself can ensure that they have a clear strategy, clear goals year over year to be able to meet the recreation needs of the citizens of Townsend.
Very good. Thank you. Reassuring.
Anybody else for Ida? Any questions? Ida, good to have you back.
Happy to be back.
Good to hear you again, and appreciate all you're doing for us. Okay. We will circle back with you, take a look at these documents, and I'll be back on the phone with you, I'm sure, and we'll do a follow-up, see what next month brings us.
Sounds great.
Thank you for your time.
So just so I'm clear, I have the continued heads up to keep moving forward on the recreation planning portion, and I am being protective of my team's time as we wait for the copy from ETDD, which is our scope of work to then present that as a fully vetted, graphically rich document. But I'll wait for you all to share further steps as how we move forward with that piece of the scope.
Yeah, we'll be in touch soon. Thanks, Ida.
We'll be in touch.
All right, it's good to have SC Group back in the loop here after a month off. Let's continue to discuss our consultants. Last month, we had asked the mayor to meet with ETDD to discuss the document, partial document that they had presented to us. So I'll turn it over to the mayor.
Okay, sounds good. Mr. Chairman, if you would indulge me, can we just have a quick round of introductions for our guests so we know who everybody
Yeah,
is?
let's go ahead and start. What committee's here?
John McMahon, live on Townsend Road.
Sandy Hedrick.
Houston Olo.
Dave Hoke.
Christina Delaney.
Logan Hall.
And I'm Don Craig. So we did have, two meetings have occurred with ETDD since this group has met. So I participated in the first of these meetings along with the interim city manager and the chair of the planning commission. We met with Mr. Akim Larson Etu, but we talked a little bit about what the scope of work was and what the format would be for the report. I think in that first meeting, there might have been some possibility in the mind of ETDD that they might offer a different format for the report. But I think Kim said that he did understand, what the CPAC is asking for. We talked about what SE Group's role was with their contract, and so I think it's quite clear at this point that ETDD is in charge of providing an updated draft based on the chapters in our current land use and transportation plan. And so we charged Kim at that meeting to come back to us with some more granularity on what his thinking was. And there was a second meeting with the city manager and the chair of the planning commission where they discussed, and Kim provided this outline that I'm sharing with you today.
Before you move forward, so for the record, there was no response from my email back to him as based from the committee's voice. So the first I'm hearing is what you're telling me now. And the first committee is hearing is what you're telling us now.
Yeah, we've had to...
So let me ask one question and follow up with that is, based on what they submitted, we're looking for that correction and format change. We will be looking for some additional information also.
Yes,
Okay.
that's right.
Okay.
Okay, and we clarified what the role is of CPAC, what the role is of SE Group, so that ETDD has a better idea of what their lane is and what their expectations are. So what was provided back, and I haven't had time to get briefed on this, but I'll tell you that this looks very similar to the chapters in the current land use and transportation plan. So I'm pleased about that. So if you look at the land use and transportation plan, the first section is the introduction. And so here's ETDD's version of some of the things that they think will be important to include in the introduction. So in addition to some of these other things, they are suggesting to include a foreword, a preface, a purpose of the comprehensive community plan, and then a description, profile, portrait of Townsend. What I don't see in here, and would be feedback, is the vision statement that we worked so hard on and had so much public input. So the vision statement has been guiding us as we go through this whole process, and this is the place where it needs to be located. So some of my feedback on this document will be that it needs to incorporate the vision statement here at the beginning and the introductions. And I think, as I've read this, I think these are thoughts from ETDD. It does not mean that this is necessarily inclusive, and if you don't see something in the current plan, that it wouldn't necessarily be in what their narrative draft will include. So then the next chapter, natural features, so that corresponds pretty good with chapter 2 in our current plan, and it would have basically a discussion of climate, air quality, topography, drainage patterns, water quality, and soil profiles, and a land and natural development code analysis covering guidelines for sustainable land development. That sounds new. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but if it's something that would be useful, I would certainly, entertain that as part of the natural features. The things that the committee has asked ETDD to also consider are flooding. And so there are current flood maps, but I think as we've heard and seen in other parts of the country recently, even some of the FEMA flood maps might not fit into some of the current rainfall projections. And so I think we need a much more robust section in the natural features to talk about the floods. You can go online, there's quite a lot of data and information on flooding of the Little River in Townsend that talks about at what stages the river has crested. I think the one in the last 50 years that's the highest I saw in 1994, 15 feet above its banks. And then there's been several times where it's 10, 12 feet above flood stage. But if you think about, how quickly it might come up to 20 or 30 feet, I mean, the Y is the confluence of the drainage of two big mountain slopes. And so depending on how much rainfall, if you got as much as they got with Hurricane Helene, I'd like to see that rainfall projected onto Townsend and what that would mean for us. And I think they probably have the type of resources to be able to generate something like that in terms of the natural features. Wildfires, another important thing. The next chapter, socioeconomic trends. So I think in Kim's last presentation, he presented quite a lot of information on that, which I found to be very interesting. Number of people that actually live and work in Townsend, 15% sticks in my mind. Those lucky 15%, the rest of us are commuters outside of Townsend. But so many things, continue to change. Telecommunications being another big one. We got a new water line coming in, so everybody is seeing that, and we will have some redundancy in our electrical grid. There's all kinds of stuff there that will be important to include. And you can see here some of Kim's thinking, or ETED's thinking here. Maybe I'll just go ahead and run through it, Mr. Chairman, and then we can have a discussion on it.
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, so now, next chapter that's being proposed, the next two chapters are new. As you know, ETDD feels strongly that they want to provide us with more of a framework or a guide on how we might update our zoning regulations. Part of the exercise, we had a whole workshop on this with ETDD. Part of the end product was envisioned to be something that's, fairly detailed in terms of here's things you need to do to update your zoning regulations. Not that we're going to bite off the zoning and the subdivision regulations as part of this plan, but that it would have, as coming out of this, some more detail here. Same thing for subdivision regulations. Could these be chapters? I don't know. I would envision them as appendix, or maybe something that is connected with the development plan or the implementation methods. But I would welcome the thoughts of the committee on how it flows in here, whether you want to have these chapters on zoning and subdivision regulations come right here, sort of in the middle of the document.
Well, the chapters are fairly straightforward in terms of presenting fact, things that we have in place, and the zoning is going to be a process of updating, not a dictation of zones. So I think just by definition, it's out of place as a chapter and needs to be presented as either an implementation plan or as an appendix.
Okay. All right, we can provide that feedback. Also, so then coming up, the next chapter, transportation analysis and preliminary corridor study. And so currently, we do have section 4 of the current land use transportation plan, land use and transportation inventory and analysis. So I think this is generally starting to correspond, which makes me feel good that it's corresponding with the framework that we're using now. That'll provide continuity. What is new in this section, and this one might be rightly placed, is to talk about a corridor management study. Now, we talked about this a couple of times in the Planning Commission. Mr. Chair, I think we talked with you about whether this was the place to try to tackle this in the CPAC meeting. I think it's probably good to have something in the land use and transportation plan about corridor management, but I think that probably will need to be taken up by the Planning Commission as something that they should look more in a more detailed way.
I think our discussion was the time it would take and the amount of labor intense it was. So I would be kind of more along the appendix side, attaching it to the.
Yeah, I think this is something, and we do engage with the state and with the county on road planning. And this would be a great opportunity for us to, get some additional advice from those guys. We are in the southern group, and right now I don't know that we're staffing the quarterly meetings. I don't know if we have ever staffed those quarterly meetings with the state or with the county, but we probably need to find somebody that could attend those. I know that Commissioner Hedrick, I think, attends in the morning for the North Group, but it would be good for us to attend that, and this is where that kind of stuff could help us. So that's what I'm reasonably comfortable about, having something about the quarter study in this chapter. But welcome your thoughts about it. The next section, they've got it as comprehensive land development and growth management analysis. That sounds okay. It sounds very similar to section 5, the development plan. It says this is a summative assessment of land use patterns, zoning designations, subdivision, transportation, and other infrastructure issues. Discussive narration of growth and development scenarios and strategies, transit zone zoning overlays. So this is important. These are the actual land use policies. So the thing that, we can make sure that we get as much of the data and information, as the Vice Chair was saying, in this upfront section. But what we will really need to put our thought into is what are those land use policies. For example, if we decide that we want Townsend to look different in 10 years, 15 years, you have to start to lay that groundwork now. And so if you want there to be something where, historical things are developed and sort of co-located, if that makes sense, then you could have different zoning overlays. If you're looking at residential population versus businesses, having zoning overlays gives a target for what you want things to look like 10 years, 15 years down the road. And that becomes one of the things that is a guiding principle for the Planning Commission. So we've had some discussion already about zoning overlays and how we might start to organize Townsend a little different if we think that that's indeed something that we need. So that's what that section consists of. So I'm pleased that ETDD is agreed that that's essentially the development plan there. And then they have comprehensive implementation plus monitoring and evaluation strategy. And if you look at some of the bullets there, it looks very similar to the implementation plan in Chapter 6. So I think what I take away from this is that they've heard us on that. They've got something else maybe in mind that they want to provide a little more granularity on zoning or subdivision. I would ask them to prioritize the rest of this plan before they get to that so that they can deliver it on the timeline. ETDD is working on a timeline, the Gantt chart that they've shared with this committee that puts their work completion in September. But that's just 3 months from now. And it seems to me this is a lot of work to do in 3 months. It's a lot of work to share with the committee and expect the committee to have time to take a look at and provide some feedback on. So as soon as some of these narrative sections are drafted, I would expect that they would come over and we would be able to discuss them and be able to have public input on that. But
I'm wondering if we should have them present at our next meeting.
I think that'd be a good idea.
And we might have to possibly look at maybe assisting in that process as far as the number of meetings. So I'd like to send an email after this meeting to East Tennessee Development District and have them prepare comprehensive for next meeting. Not only to catch up what I feel is in the rears, but to add to that. Anybody agree with that? Any additions?
What's the specific ask in terms of the presentation?
So we had asked for initially the document that was proposed. That I need to see that converted to this process. The email that went back to them was to follow the current land use document guidelines. So convert that And I would say what would be comfortable for another 30 days of their work added to that. That would probably take a phone call to him to find out exactly what he thinks. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so the last document we received, what, maybe, Mayor, can you maybe fill us in where you think it would fall into this structure that they have now?
It was too.
Well, it was a lot of data and analysis, so I think it's spread among those first 3, maybe 4 sections.
So I think that's kind of going back to my question a second ago, is that I don't think that they can provide us a reasonable answer to our request in a new format without essentially being done with this, unless we just ask them for like a process document, you know,
Yeah.
show us what you have. Let's gut check it. Let's make sure you're on the right path. So
That's kind of what I'm
Okay.
thinking of.
My sense, Mr. Vice Chair, is they're no longer proposing any new format. This
Yeah.
is the format
Yeah.
that they're proposing, and we can give them some feedback on the zoning and subdivision regulations, but generally, it seems to follow the
Yeah.
land use trend.
So we'll ask them for a work today, completion today,
Yeah.
whatever
But
they feel.
What I might suggest is to ask them to present, or as part of their presentation, present on the Gantt chart that they provided us many months ago, and ask them how they're coming on their timeline, and when the committee would be able to receive this information. So,
On principle, I agree with you, but I have very little faith in that. Like, we've looked at that before, and it ends up being a 2-minute thing. Yeah, we're here, we'll be there. And then
I'm going to
it's-
ask for content.
yeah, I think that's reasonable, and you're pretty far down the road in that Gantt
Yeah.
chart too. So either things have gotten done, or they're in process, or we need to know where they are at this point.
Okay, so for the feedback on like adding the vision statement in, asking for floods and wildfires being in the natural features, maybe we have a wildflower section too, and a good count on those. The feedback about the zoning section, and then just the note about the preliminary corridor study, kind of how that slots in. Does that come from you and the planning commission chair, kind of the same method that you were communicating with ETDD over the last month? Or should that be part of Dave's kind of official response via email?
I think it'd be nice if it came from the committee.
Okay, so let me get with you after to get that content, so I don't have to copy it off you or try to remember. I will pull that Gantt chart, and I'll get a better look, we'll all get a better look at this. I think they've submitted this to you, Mayor, in hopes that this looks like the previous document. Was that their intent?
That's the way I'm reading it.
Now, and I did see the fact that there were some things that we had discussed that we wanted in this, that obviously they missed the vision statement, but some of the zoning and stuff discussed.
Yeah, if there's things from any previous meetings, I know we've started through some of those initial chapters. You led us through some of those early on. If there's any, important things for us to capture there, we can certainly do that.
Well, I think the whole idea here is for us not to do their work for them also.
Right.
So I think we'll
But
want to,
if there's stuff missing,
Yeah.
that
we
would
need
be.
to know what that stuff missing is, so. Okay, I'll follow up with them. I'll reach out to the vice chair for his notes. Anybody else, committee input in my conversation with ETDD?
Does it help or hurt if you include all of us on that email chain?
Oh, no, you won't be on the, oh, yeah.
That reminds me, talking about previous meetings, we did have a workshop on historic and preservation, which ETDD conducted, and I don't really see that report in here. Where does that go? So, yeah, that could make a nice annex, sort of on its own. But that was their workshop, and they got lots of feedback on that workshop, so I'd be interested to see where it gets reflected in the plan.
All right, anybody, committee, any input here? good direction. I'm happy to see those meetings take place. Mayor, thank you very much for your leadership. And it's attempting to look like East Tennessee Development District is back on the track, per se. I think that was the goal, at least in our minds, was to make it look like our previous document somewhat. So we have to do what we have to do, and there's times to be tough. These are the times. I think if all hearts and minds are clear on the committee as far as moving forward, we'll open up to any public comment. Anybody, for good of the community, if anybody has anything that they want to, questions or answers, or come on up to the microphone.
In regard to previous meetings, so we had in April, had the zoning ordinance workshop that Kim did. You know, there was a PowerPoint, and I got a copy of that.
Okay.
I made, the mayor said, you know, public can comment, so I made some comments, turned it in on time. So how does, I'm used to when people make comments, and this is probably to show the public that you're at least listening to, you don't have to agree, that like my comments and anybody else's comments could be documented and at least responded to in some way. So I guess I'm asking what happened to those comments. Is that going to be part of the zoning chapter? Because I made comments and there was some other people, I think some of your actual commission people. So I'm just a public person making comments. I talked about the parking garage.
Yeah, was that in the digital document or the physical one?
I just had a paper
You
copy.
did a copy, yes.
I made a handwritten comments, I turned it into Gale. I just made a picture of it for my
I
record.
didn't see any of those comments. I've not seen those.
So I didn't know where those get, I'm assuming those go back to Kim, because I'm the one that did the, how many houses are in business, B1, and I think he did get that. So I'm just, you see what I mean?
Yeah, I'd like to see your comments. Yeah.
Hang on, stay right there. Gail, that was turned in to the city,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And sent to Kim, but I can send it to you.
Yeah, so it doesn't come back to,
Okay, well, yeah, you can tell him, you know, give a new comment, because that's the consultant, I don't care if they agree with the comments, but just be nice to acknowledge them, because
I agree.
they don't acknowledge.
I'd like to see him, yeah.
absolutely.
So,
I kind of think anything that goes to Kim, we should be commenting on now.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Riddle. Well, I think those comments did or will go to ETDD, and those it was part of the workshop that they held. But I take your point. It'd be nice if they were acknowledged, and my assumption is that they will be reflected in whatever ultimate document that there is. So we can follow up with ETDD.
I'll be watching for it.
Sounds good. You do that.
All right, anybody else? All right, thank you all for coming out. We're in work mode here. Mayor, thank you, thank the committee. Good turnout
I
tonight.
do have a question, Dave.
Absolutely.
When do we think we're going to be routing this? I think originally it was supposed to be July, correct?
Well, I think our Gantt chart with ETBD is
It says
September.
And then after that it'll be sometime?
Yeah, I would say so, yeah. And I know we've been together for quite a while. We might even see our second Christmas party. if we don't. But I do, and that's a great point, Christina. This has been a long process for a lot of us, and it's a lot of work to take this input, go through these consultants, and take all this information and make sure that it's on the right track. I can't thank all of you enough. But we're rounding third base, and I think now's the time we're going to see a finished product, or that we can turn back into planning, and that'll be good for the city of Townsend. So if all hearts and minds are clear, I'd like to see if there's a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
No, look at Logan. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Have a good evening.